Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and I am here again with my Positively Pipeman segment, and we are here with our expert resident guest on business, and boy, do we have something great today to talk about, because we're going to talk about 7 things winning business owners do in uncertain economic times, and what could be more appropriate than in 2025 talking about this, because certainly I think everything is uncertain times right now. So let's welcome to the show once again, Michael Barbarita. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me again, Dean.
My pleasure. So what are these 7 things?
Well, yeah. So, we can never really be ready for uncertain times or bad economic conditions, but we can be prepared. And these 7 things is how we need to prepare for those difficult times that happen inevitably.
I always say, expect the unexpected.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you get surprised where it goes deeper than the unexpected, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But one of the greatest characteristics of a business owner is the ability to adapt and to be flexible to change. A lot of business owners aren't, and as a result, they have a tough time thriving in uncertain or bad economic conditions, or unfavorable economic conditions. You have to be able to adapt and be flexible. And when you're stagnant and you don't have the ability to change mindset, to change or make decisions quickly, what happens is that you fall by the wayside in more difficult economic environment. And so the ability to adapt is certainly number one. Secondly, you have to be able to define your personal goal first. A lot of business owners when I ask the business owner, what's your number one goal? They always say, I want to increase revenue 50%, or I want to generate $1 million in revenue. Or I have to keep asking them, so what will that do for you? Because that eventually gets them to whatever their number one goal really is. So they might say something like, so if I'm interviewing a business owner, they'll say, well, my number one goal is to do an extra $1 million of revenue. Okay, that's good. So once you've done $1 million of revenue, what will that do for you? And they'll say, well, I'll be able to hire somebody. I said, okay, great. You got $1 million of revenue. You were able to hire somebody. What will that do for you? And then they'll say something like, well, I'll have extra time. Great. I'm still not there yet. So $1 million. So you're doing $1 million of revenue. You hired someone. You have all this free time. What will that do for you? And then finally, after peeling off all the layers of the onion, we get to their number one goal, which is usually, but not all the time, some type of time freedom and leveraged revenue, where the business runs by itself, and then they have the time freedom to go on date nights with their wife. They have the time freedom to go to kids' events. They have the time freedom without worrying about the office or the company. They have the time freedom to go on more vacations, that type of thing. That's usually, not all the time, but it's usually what their number one goal really is. So you really got to get down to that level when determining your number one goal. So it's your number one personal goal first, then your business goal, which is number 3. Mm-hmm. So now you can talk about getting to the $1 million. Now you can talk about getting to the $1 million, or how you're going to leverage the revenue so that you don't have to be there. So, but normally people start with revenue. They really should start with net profit goals first, then revenue. The reason is because net profit is how you determine what your take home pay is, and what how much value you're bringing to the business. So you start with net profit goals first. That way you can determine a lot of things. I mean, you can talk about revenue, but if your bottom line is weak, what did we do here?
Exactly. You know, you could have all the revenue in the world, but then if you are not generating a net profit, the revenue doesn't do you any good.
Right. And then that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, so you have to have net profit goals first, then revenue goals. And then the other thing, Dean, is you have to adopt a visionary mindset. You know, a lot of business owners make decisions for the here and the now, and they look at like the next 3 days when they make the decisions. In difficult economic times, that mindset is a mindset of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to go into negativity and scarcity mode, but you can't do it because the world isn't ending, it's changing. And that's why we need to adapt, not shut down. Avoid scarcity-based decisions and make visionary decisions. Think about the impact of your decision next quarter, not next week, next quarter, next year, 5 years from now. Make decisions that will serve you in the long run. Because when we think about the vision of our companies as business owners, it inspires us to think that way.
Yeah. And I want to add to that too, that is basically how this network got started. I started it in the worst economy in U.S. history at that time.
Yep.
And at a time where streaming was not a word yet, podcasting was not a word yet, but I did have a vision because I was at what they would call an internet radio station at that time, and because streaming wasn't a word. And I was like, man, this is the future, but not like this, because basically the station, you know, I was used to doing radio shows in New York in fancy studios, and the station was doing it out of their home at the dining room table. And it's like, no, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And if my vision of where media was going to be, which is where it is today, you still have to do it the professional way, you know, and that is, you know, copy what is the previous technology, which I call terrestrial radio is the previous because it's not as popular anymore, but still professional studios, professional engineers, state-of-the-art equipment. And, you know, basically, I always said it was like Bill Gates and IBM. Bill Gates had a vision of a PC in every home. IBM could not see that vision. They said, you're nuts. The mainframe's never going away. And IBM suffered for 25 years after that to get back to where they were from that day. And they're still not considered they're still around, but they're not considered the icon they were then. They never really recovered, whereas Microsoft became that icon because of that vision of Bill Gates.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example of that visionary mindset. And, you know, every business should have a mission and a vision, and that vision should maintain itself even if there's uncertain times, even if there's bad economic conditions.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really important. If you can maintain that, and I know it's difficult, but if you can maintain that visionary mindset, it's going to go a long way. And the next action item, Dean, quite frankly, it's going to freak out everyone because it's about knowing your numbers. And I have a few things to say about that. And one thing I have to say about it is that I've interviewed, you know, almost a couple of hundred business owners over the last couple of years. And 80% I asked 3 basic financial questions. What are your sales? What's your gross profit percent? What's your net profit percent? And 80% of business owners that I interview don't know the answers to those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And winning business owners make the right decisions in bad economic times or uncertain economic times because they make decisions based on the numbers. Now, when times are good, you get by. You get by not looking at the numbers. Not but you get by. You get by. But to win in uncertain times, to win in bad or unfavorable economic conditions, you must make decisions based on the numbers. And what I've done is I've identified what I call the vital five. These 5 numbers should be with every business owner at all times. They should burn in their memory at all times. And that is sales, gross profit percent, net profit, and your current cash balance. If you know these 5 numbers, I'm not saying you'll know everything about your business financially. You won't. But you'll know a lot of it. And you'll be able to make decisions with confidence. And the reason why I say that is because if you track those metrics, not only know them, but track them, and you see them starting to fall unfavorably, you'll be able to start looking into fixing those areas, fixing them. And so, and so by constantly understanding those 5 numbers, you're able to manage your business more efficiently than 80% of your competitors do.
And you're so right. It blows my mind how many people, like, let's say they apply for a business loan and all the requirements for like an SBA loan, they don't have any of it. Like balance sheet. I've heard people say to me when I've said something about balance sheet, they're like, what's that? Like, how you run a business without a balance sheet? Or like when I talk to prospects, and we want to come up with what their budget is for doing business with me. And their answer is, I'll have to check my accounts. And I'm thinking in my head, what? Like, you don't know how much money is in your bank account? You don't know how much available you have? Like, and for some of those people, that is absolutely true. And that can cause serious problems in your business to fly so blindly like that.
No question. And that's the problem. But, now I'm going to continue the freak out section here, because next, winning business owners in uncertain times and unfavorable economic conditions not necessarily understand the financial statements, but understand what the financial statements are telling them, what the P&L is telling them, what the balance sheet is telling them, and what the cash flow statement is telling them. And when I'm in a room of business owners and I ask, how many people in this room have looked at their P&L, look at their P&L at least once a month, about half the room raises their hand in terms of looking at it.
Yeah.
When I ask how many people look at their balance sheet, to your point, once a month, less than 10% raise their hand. And when I ask how many people look at their cash flow statement, which is the third statement of importance, in a once a month, I might get one person to raise their hand. And what's incredible about that is that cash flow is the lifeblood of a business, and it's being totally neglected by most business owners.
I don't even understand how you could not know your cash flow, because how you operate and stay in business without that.
I don't know. Now, once again, you cannot look at these numbers and just always, because you've been flush with cash recently, you'll get by, but that's the issue we're talking about today, is what happens in uncertain or unfavorable economic times. And that's when it's a problem, big problem.
Yeah, 100%.
And then the next thing winning business owners have, as I continue to freak them out on this numbers thing, and by the way, they don't have to. The good news is you don't have to know how to read financial statements, but you need to understand the story behind them, and you need to get help understanding the story behind those financial statements. So you got to get that help. And one of the beautiful things about our business is that we're both fractional CFOs and strategic implementation specialists. So we know the strategy to do when the numbers are, first of all, we know how to read the numbers, but secondly, and we can help you understand what's happening, allow you to understand the story behind the numbers, but then we have the fix for it. And so the next thing that winning business owners have in uncertain times is a business and cash flow forecast. Why? Well, because the business and cash flow forecast helps you understand the outcome and ramifications of your decisions before you make them.
Yeah.
Before you make them. And that's why it's so valuable. And that, most business owners are surprised by income taxes. That's probably one of the biggest shockers that a business owner has at the end of the year, right? Well, if you have a business and cash flow forecast, you'll never be surprised by that or anything for that matter, again, because you'll always know what your projected profit looks like. And the same thing with the forecast from a cash flow standpoint tells you when it's cloudy, not when it's raining.
Right.
So the bottom line is, if you want to thrive in uncertain times, the number one tool that you have to have is a business and cash flow forecast. And so the next thing is winning business owners in uncertain times, they implement the right business strategies. And what we found, and we've talked about this before, that 95% of business strategies used today are identical to your competition. They don't work. So your strategic plan at a minimum needs to include a position of market dominance, which you talked about before, a compelling offer, which we talked about the 5 components of a compelling offer in previous shows, and joint venture partnerships that are working, which is something we'll talk about soon. Just to name 3 of several strategies that are available to you. And the 7th component here of the 7th action item is the general mindset of business owners at uncertain times, Dean, is to cut everything. You can't cut your way to success. We actually have a formula for cutting expenses. So it's a 4-part formula. You cut the expense if the expense doesn't help you acquire a customer, if the expense doesn't help you retain a customer, if the expense doesn't help increase the long-term value of a customer, and if the expense doesn't help deliver your product or service to the customer.
Yeah, because if you cut expenses just to cut them, they could end up being a lot more costly than if you didn't cut them at all.
That's exactly what happens. And then after you apply these rules to expenses, this is also part of the 7th step. Look for look to invest in the 3 A's: assets that produce revenue, amazing people to help you scale, and automation to leverage time. Because success in uncertain times is not defined by those who spend less. It's defined by those who spend smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're all facing the call to adapt and to make decisions based on the numbers. And those who do will make business a lot less terrifying. And those who do will achieve that number one goal that they set out for themselves. And those who do will thrive in uncertain times. And there are, Dean, there are more millionaires and billionaires minted in bad economic times than any other time period in history.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I put together the 7th step, or 7 action items for business owners.
Love it. And it is so true. Like, look at the Rockefellers came out of the Great Depression, and so, yeah.
And you came out of that. When you started your business, you talked about how difficult the economy was, right?
Because that's really when, those are the best times. People think those are the worst times to start a business.
Right.
Those are the best times because everybody else thinks it's the worst times.
Right.
So how do people get more information from you, connect with you, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Once again, this week, I'm offering 3 lucky listeners an opportunity to have an assessment with me, a 90-minute assessment. And I promise you that I will show you how to increase revenue a minimum of $100,000 without spending any additional money on marketing or advertising. And simply go to our website, nextstepcfo.net /contact. In the contact page, fill it out. And in the message section, type the words 100K. And I'll send you a calendar link where you can schedule a 90-minute session where I guarantee that I will show you a minimum of $100,000 of additional revenue without spending an additional dollar on marketing or ads.
That sounds worth it to me, for sure.
There you go. Absolutely.
Well, once again, a very informative, great episode in the Positively Pipeman segment. And so thank you very much, Michael Barbarita, for being the expert you are. And thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Thank you for having me, Dean.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.